Hello, this is Matthew from the Sanger Institute.
Hey there.
Hi, it's Gabriel from Diamond Light Source.
Yeah, I'm Tom
Hey.
from RAL. Most people at Diamond working from home now.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain everyone pretty much is. Yeah, you now have to have basically a letter or an email from your line manager's line manager to say you can go into site.
Sounds sensible.
Yeah.
Ish.
The entire
everyone.
Sanger campus is closed, except for people working in the animal house and folk dealing with sequencing COVID-19, which has been slightly disruptive.
Yeah, we've got the same situation as we're in shutdown. Yeah, we're now having to get out of shutdown to allow that to continue. A bit hectic.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, Tom. My mic okay?
Sounds good to me.
Cool.
How are you doing?
Good. Couple of weeks into a lockdown here.
Yeah. It's the very beginning for us here, so it's sort of exciting.
I think I've been at work in the office one day in the month of March. I was staying home anyway before because the kids had a school holiday. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Problem is I kind of like working from home.
Sure has its benefits.
The flip side is even I, who am pretty much averse to exercise, do like getting out of the house once in a while.
Hi all, my mic working?
Yeah, we hear you.
Perfect, thanks.
All right, well, it's a few minutes after, so I suppose we can get started. The turnout is much better than it was an hour ago. So looks like a lot of people are probably on the pad as well. I threw some topics on there. Looks like somebody else threw one or two on there. Guess just start with, is there anything particularly pressing or interesting somebody wants to add about before we, burn through the topic list? Yes. Did everybody read through the Octopus release notes yet?
I haven't yet got to them where our Ceph clusters are currently looking after themselves because a way to do other things. Basically, grateful I can largely let Ceph deal with itself, but that doesn't mean I haven't looked at the release notes yet for Octopus.
Yeah.
Teo on our side was having a look at installing it, and there's a lot of dependencies missing on CentOS 8.
Is it really?
Yeah, so I don't know. He had to hack some repos, find some stuff, but I guess this will be sorted out at some point.
Hopefully. Probably. I mean, it only came out, what was it, yesterday or the day before, so it's probably going to be quite a while until anybody gets around to it, given current conditions as well.
They also, I don't know if people noticed, but they've changed the way the repos work. So now there isn't, like, for Debian nor CentOS, they only put the latest release in the repo now, and they have like versioned repos for everything else. So this might, I don't know what kind of implications this has, but like if you're mirroring, you'll get the older versions deleted.
Huh, interesting. That's something to watch out for people using like spacewalk or mirroring.
Right. So you can use, there's a repo per version now, and then they just have a soft link of like the RPM dash Octopus now just the soft link to the latest release, or a repo with only the latest release in it.
The one interesting thing I saw was that, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, is there a reason for that change?
I don't know.
Cool. Okay.
They've had the versioned repos for a while. I've always kind of cloned those locally into their own repos and never mixed them, I think. So I think they're just changing like the latest one now. So I was going to say, the new Ceph ADM tooling looks kind of cool. My only gripe about it was deploying everything in containers, which I don't see the point of on dedicated hardware. What do you guys think about that?
I have to admit, I'm not sure. I can sort of see why you might want containers. If you don't, it means you don't have to worry about dependencies quite so much. But it is another layer of complexity and another layer to worry about where the problem is coming from if you're debugging. So I remain slightly skeptical of containerizing all the things.
Yeah, I pretty much have the same feelings. If you're on shared hardware, it's great, but if you're running dedicated hardware, why are you going to put another layer with the virtual networking and all that sort of stuff in between it?
The good news is that Sage wrote that himself, so if there's any problems, he'll be fixing it personally.
Yep. Looks like somebody wanted to talk about auto repair, safe to use on large Luminous Bluestore clusters. Has anybody done that?
Yeah, yeah, that was my question. We've been thinking about it for a while, but the fact that it's off by default makes us slightly nervous. I was wondering if anyone's used it at sort of scale, and whether there are any gotchas we need to be aware of before turning it on our big production cluster.
We use it, and it's really good. So in Luminous, it only works on, well, maybe they changed this in the latest point release of Luminous, but it was only working on erasure-coded pools for a while, and then they added a fix to make it work on replicated pools as well. In Nautilus, it works on both. And how it works is that all of the deep scrubs, like when you do Ceph status, all the deep scrubs show up with a repair in the name now. Right. So that kind of looks a bit weird at first, but they're not actually repairing. Then it's just that if it comes across an inconsistency, it repairs it right away instead of waiting for you to type Ceph PG repair. So if you were doing Ceph PG repair in the past, like as part of your normal like workflow, then I think it's perfectly safe. Now, what happens is there's a threshold. I think the number is 5. If it finds more than 5 objects inconsistent in a PG during the deep scrub, it won't do the repair. It just leaves it as inconsistent, and then you can go and do whatever. Mm-hmm. For us, it's been really great because I don't know. Our disks have this thing where they're still fine, but sometimes, on some of our clusters, they just don't. They just like the read doesn't happen properly. So it looks like the data is inconsistent, but it was just an I/O error on the read. And if you write back that shows up as a pending sector. If you write back that sector, it writes the data again, and it's fine. It reallocates or whatever happens internally. I don't know, but the disk is still pretty okay. So just a repair is kind of like repairing the PG, which just rewrites the object, seems fine, and the disk lasts for another several months at least.
Yeah, we've certainly seen disks where we've repaired a few, and usually only if something is causing us problems repeatedly, not entirely failed, will we sort of preemptively. So that's all useful to know. Thank you.
That's only for Bluestore, right? It doesn't work on FileStore.
Right. It needs the
checksumming.
Yeah. It doesn't work because FileStore, there's no source of truth of what the correct checksum of the object is.
Yeah.
It just compares the replicas, and then they vote. Right.
Yeah. Well, that's another big benefit of using Bluestore over FileStore. Yeah. Somebody mentioned compression with Bluestore. Anybody using that?
So this was me that wrote that. That was just a heads up to not enable LZ4 compression in case people didn't see it, because there's a data corruption bug. So if you have
ouch, I'm using it.
In all released versions, so it depends on which operating system you have. If you have CentOS, then the LZ4 library has a bug. If you have very new Ubuntu, I suppose it's probably okay. If you have Ubuntu, I think 18.04, which is the last LTS, right? Ubuntu 18.04 has the bug. Let me try to find the ticket. how it manifests, it won't corrupt your data, but it will corrupt your OSD map. Like if you're extremely unlucky, like we were, and it will crash all of your OSDs at the same time.
I think I remember seeing that come across the list.
Sorry, two were talking at the same time. What was that?
I was just saying that I remember seeing those flying on the users list, I think, a month or so ago. The OSDs crashing multiple times.
Yeah, we had a 9-hour outage on our cloud because of this. It sucked. So the other compression algorithms work. You can just switch to Snappy and you're safe. And just so you guys understand how crazy this is, the way that Bluestore does the checksums, it's at the lowest level. It's checksumming the bits which are written to the disk. That means that the checksum is after it's been compressed. If there's a bug in the compression algorithm, this would go undetected. And how it actually manifests for us is that we, trying to understand why these things crashed is that a new OSD map was generated, like is happening every second on our cluster. It received the OSD map like from another OSD. It decoded it, which decoded successfully. It then wrote that to Bluestore. And then like 1 second later, it reads it out of Bluestore, and it cannot be decoded and it's corrupted, and the OSD exits with a CRC error in the OSD map. And this is because the particular structure of our OSD map triggered this LZ4 bug. Talk about this. Like I prepared a presentation, and I'll probably do it as a Ceph tech talk point because debugging it was kind of interesting. But you can find all of the details there in that tracker ticket that I put on the pad.
Oh, that seems like it's an awful week for you, probably.
Oh yeah.
I'm glad. Other than the OSD maps, everything recovered fine. Nothing wrong after you switched to Snappy.
Yeah, we switched off compression completely.
Oh, okay.
Just I don't know.
So when you switch off compression completely, does that leaves part of the data on your cluster compressed, and the other whatever's coming in new is uncompressed now?
Right. So it decompresses the old stuff, and like as you read it, it's just the writes are not compressed anymore.
Yeah.
And the data was not. So what triggered the bug is that the OSD. So internally in Ceph, they use these buffer lists, which are like linked lists of memory, and like so LZ4 was like compressing this linked list of data, and it kind of like by jumping around in memory, having this fragmented input buffer, it triggers the bug. When we write like actual objects and then compress them, that's just one big buffer, like a char star, and that should hopefully not trigger. I don't know. I have a feeling that we would know by now if there was actually data corruptions happening.
Yeah. Well, that'll be an interesting tech talk if you ever get around to doing that.
Yeah, maybe next month I'll I don't even know who to reach out to for that. Probably.
I thought Isn't Mike still organizing that stuff, or is he not?
Mike went on leave for something. I'm not sure what, but so I don't know who's organizing those now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all from that issue.
Looks like somebody just added recommendations for erasure-coded file systems.
It was me, actually. I was reading the other day that they changed a little bit the recommendation, how to actually create, if you want to have a erasure-coded file system, you should add it as an additional data pool and not as the main pool. Because apparently, some of the data that gets written to it can be more performant if the main pool that hosts the file system is replicated. What we were suggesting is you create a replicated pool, and then you add an additional pool that is erasure coded, and you pin your tree to it. I was wondering if anyone has actually read it. Actually, I don't remember. I think it was in the beginning. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I tried this a few weeks ago. It works as expected. I haven't tried it in Anger yet.
So you created a replicated pool and then added additional data pool for erasure coding. I was wondering actually what the performance penalty is with the previous setup. That's the setup we have in production. So we really anytime.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm only just starting to look at it now, so I haven't got an existing setup to compare it with. I guess while we're talking about CephFS and like pool layouts and stuff, I have been I'm setting up sort of a reasonably large, like a couple of petabyte multi-tenant CephFS cluster, so a couple of the big users on site. And my plan is to use the pool layout to put everybody's data in individual pools, so just do like the directory pinning as you said. It seems like a sensible way to do it. Gives me a bit more flexibility in the future if I need to actually start messing around with crush layouts. Has anybody done this? Is this a bad idea? Do you end up I'm worried about ending up in an odd situation because I've tried to do something too clever. But yeah.
Just pinning the directories? You're asking if that's okay?
Yeah, like just effectively pinning top-level directories to different pools and then just using it like that. It seems fairly
we definitely do
that.
It's like that's what makes CephFS work for us.
Cool.
Letting the automatic balancing go doesn't really work for us because we find that whatever the heuristic's doing is just like it's just moving people's directories around from one MDS to another like forever. They never stabilize.
Sorry, Dan, you're talking about MDS like directory pinning, right?
Yeah.
I was talking about the pool layout stuff where you can assign.
Sorry.
Yep. Yeah, where you can have a subdirectory and then that's actually a different Rados pool underneath.
Fine.
Yeah.
That should also be fine, by the way. In fact, there's some new recommendation that came out that you're not if you want to do erasure coding for CephFS, the root directory, the pool which has / would be a replicated pool. I don't know if people have seen that.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to. I was wondering if someone actually measured I thought it was for performance reasons. Penalty is if someone has any idea.
I don't know why they made that recommendation. I had a feeling it was more for disaster recovery reasons. But I don't know.
Has anybody actually done any testing with like because obviously now you can have EC Ceph. Is the performance that much worse? I guess obviously it's very use case dependent, but it's such massive space savings that if it's not too bad compared to replication, it would be really, really good for a lot of our users.
Performance-wise, actually, our users never really complained, and we actually moved them from RBD boxes, like RBD exported images through NFS to like CephFS. Really complain much. Well, we didn't have any complaint at all. But the only thing we're actually seeing with CephFS, erasure coded pools, that we have trouble actually using the automatic balancer on the erasure coded. Our cluster is not that big, and the erasure coded profile we choose is like 4+2. And apparently the balancer has an issue reallocating at the pool when he wants to try to equalize. And we have, I think, I think 240 PGs right now. Sorry, 240 USDs, not PGs. We guess we haven't really debugged the issue yet, but we guess it's the constraint of actually having to put it shard on a separate node that actually makes the manager spin to 100%, and until you actually ask for the balancer to be turned off, and then everything goes back to normal. And if we try to do it manually, it still doesn't work. So if we actually try to balance the map after, like with name is, but it's basically say that there is nothing to be done. That's our only issue we're having with erasure.
So sorry, this is the upmap balancer, right?
Yeah, it was the upmap balance. Yeah.
No, certainly we've had. Sorry, yeah, we've had no problems with the upmap balancer on our EC 8+3 pools, but I guess we have quite a lot more OSDs, so maybe it works a bit better.
Going off a little bit different, but still on a topic of the balancer, one thing I've noticed on my file store cluster is that after PGs are getting migrated, it's not every time, but like the data isn't being cleaned off of the OSD that it was migrated from. And that seems to be screwing up the balancer a bit, because the OSDs are showing higher space utilization. Well, it doesn't screw up the balancer, because the balancer thinks the PG count is correct, but the space utilization is artificially high on OSDs because stuff isn't cleaning up after itself. Sometimes if I reboot the box or the OSD, then they kind of kick off and finally clean up after themselves. But I've gone in and seen, like 10 PGs that were migrated still sitting on an OSD. Of a weird thing for me.
So we've not seen that, but we're only using Bluestore, so we don't have a file store to compare it with, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I assume it's file store specific. I just haven't nailed down why they're not getting cleaned up after yet. It's intermittent as well. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Makes it hard to troubleshoot. The one topic I thought of since I saw Gabriel from the Diamond Light source was at CERN, they were talking about some interesting, using dev-SHM as the OSDs, and how that was performing for them. I was kind of curious if they had any did any more testing with that or gone a different direction? You feel like telling us something, maybe?
Sorry, I missed that. What were you saying? The /dev SHM.
Yeah, at this CERN you had the poster and you were talking about using SHM as an actual OSD, right?
No, I don't think I ever used SSH. What's SHM stand for?
You're running the OSDs in memory, right?
Yeah. So we were running them in RAM.
Oh, okay.
And yeah. So as to that, it was simply we've used it to show that we could go up to the network limit, which was 48 gigabits a second. And then we've just been using it as a way to run applications that use transient memory and can be run again without having to hit our main file system. So we run it on top of our HPC. So we run it with the application and create a Ceph storage system at the same time that then writes to that object pool. So we have distributed RAM basically that we can access. And then once it's done, that's written out. So all the data that's produced during processing is just cleared. If that makes sense.
Gotcha. And you guys are still doing that? No problems with it?
Yeah, we're still, it's not in like major production, it's still in testing, as people aren't happy if it goes wrong, because it means they have to run their tests again and everything. But yeah, we're also looking at using and NVMe fabric as well at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been looking in both sides of that. But yeah, as it looks, RAM it seems to work fine. We don't have any issues in that sense. But it's not production ready.
But it does work well as a short-term buffer if you can recreate your data.
Yeah. It works well if you don't care about your data, then it would make sense to use it. I wouldn't recommend using it before if you care about it or if it's stuff that's going into cold storage. So if it is like truly transient, then it makes sense to use it.
Cool.
We were also wondering if anybody had any experience with Softline and whether it was good experience or what they think of their kit, whether they would use it themselves or.
No experience practically, but just got an email from them that they got some funding or something, so they must be doing well.
Okay.
I've gotten emails from somebody there through like LinkedIn, somehow my personal email and my work email asking to talk, so I don't know. I haven't responded to them yet.
Okay.
But I have no plans. Commodity hardware, in my opinion, works just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like somebody's CephFS snapshots, using them at scale.
Yeah, that was me. That's just I'm just always afraid of enabling snapshots. It'd be nice if somebody is using on like on a cluster with multi-hundred users doing whatever random workloads. Anybody have them enabled?
Not me.
Okay, we'll try it at some point. We'll do some like hammer testing this year of that. But first, we're going to upgrade. Our big CephFS is still running on Luminous, and I want to upgrade that to Nautilus. Are people running CephFS on Nautilus? Lots of users.
We're running on Mimic.
Mimic.
Yeah, we today also starting work on upgrading our big cluster. This with over 4,000 OSDs. We are going from 12 to 4 version. Firstly, we are going to 12 to 12, and then we are planning to going 14 to 8, because it looks quite stable right now.
Sorry, which version are you running now? I missed that.
12 to 4 right now. Yeah, I know it's old version, but we didn't have time to make an upgrade.
I know last time for our last call, there was people wondering about going to Nautilus from Luminous on their big clusters. Has anybody? I mean, it sounds like you're starting that process. Has anybody completed it yet? I went to from Mimic to Nautilus on my big cluster. That one, Nautilus has been fine for me so far.
Yeah, we're still in testing for our Luminous to Nautilus upgrade on our big cluster. It looks like it's going to be absolutely fine. It's just making sure we've touched everything.
Yeah. I don't have many users, but going back to the Ceph on Nautilus, it's been fine for me so far. I could let loose my cluster on it and process off of it. We usually don't do that. It's kind of just a test I do on occasion, but that would, hit it real hard to kind of test the stability of it. People wanted to know if that works.
Tom, can you tell us the source and destination version of cluster?
Yeah, it's currently 12 to 12, and the one I've been testing is 14 to 7. I guess if 14 to 8 is looking fine, there's no reason why I won't go for that. But so 12 to 12 to 14 to 7 is currently what I've been. That's what we've tested anyway.
So one thing I was wondering, was anybody saving any goodies for talking at Ceph that obviously isn't happening, that want to share it here, or is it more just the usual stuff? Somebody's adding in something about mixing file store and Bluestore. Anybody actually doing that at this point? Or are all your clusters all Bluestore, all file store?
We had a while when we were running mixed. We started introducing Bluestore OSDs as you replace file store ones that failed, and then at some point decided to bite the bullet and just start swapping them over a machine at a time. But we didn't see any particular excitement while we had some file store and some Bluestore.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I did my test cluster, was, just one node at a time. I brought it down, rebuilt it as Bluestore, and that didn't take too long. But a couple days it was running a mix, and I never saw problems.
Yeah, that was me adding that. So our cluster is currently, it's still mixed. It's been mixed for a few years now. and there's still around 2,000 file store OSDs in it, which is like the original generation. We've had run into a few things like recently where it hasn't caused us problems them being mixed, but it's just made it a bit harder to debug things. Like the logs are different. So, and it was just sort of that, we're currently being lazy and not doing the Bluestore migration on the original generation. And it's sort of are we actually leaving ourselves open to run into something? I don't know. Is there something that we could hit that isn't being tested, that because we're running an odd mix and that's just not something that gets tested? I don't know. It's just kind of I think it's something that we could do if we deemed it important, but I'm also just happy to let the file store OSDs leave the cluster when that generation is aged out in a year or two. And yeah, I'm not really sure how much of a priority it should be.
We found quite good performance improvements from moving to Bluestore, so that might be a motivation for shifting them in any case.
That's certainly something to think about.
I mean, I'm sure you're at slightly higher risk of hitting, a bug that was missed in testing due to that setup, but maybe it's not that bad.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'd be kind of surprised if the Ceph test suite was testing that, scenario.
But sorry for the maybe dumb question, but so you're planning to actually move from Luminous to Nautilus with a mix?
Yeah, we've done all of our.
I think had some, but I cannot recall. Like maybe just some warning in the cluster state. Don't remember exactly, but I remember that they changed something in Nautilus as opposed to Luminous. That actually expecting to have Bluestore OSDs. So if you still were running file store, there were some issues there. But I don't remember like how serious they were, to be fair. Maybe they fixed it already.
Okay. I've sort of had a dig through the mailing list and stuff to see if there's anything relevant, but it just doesn't seem to come up much in discussion, and so I'm never really sure if that's because it's a non-issue or just because it's a very rare, well, not a particularly common way for people to be running clusters.
Yeah, probably not common. How much warranty you have left on those until you take them out of your cluster, or?
So they went out of warranty last week. So that would normally mean we would be starting to think about decommissioning the generation. But with Ceph, I think we're kind of keen to leave the generations in longer and just let them age out. Not like all the way out, but like if they're not causing us a problem, let's just have the extra capacity. And so if they're still going to be, I think realistically they're probably still going to be in the cluster in 2 years' time. And so it's whether we're happy running file store OSDs for another 2 years or whether we should think about doing a big migration now. It's not going to be loads of work, but it's just going to be work and planning it. And it is 2,006 terabyte OSDs. So there's a fair amount of rebalancing to be done.
Yeah. I pretty much had the similar thoughts on my cluster. I have some, a petabyte or so going out of warranty this year, but I wasn't in a big rush to, unrack it and get it out. I figured I'd just let it run for the extra capacity for another year or something until I need the rack space. A testament to our faith in stuff keeping our data, safe.
I'm actually wondering what's the strategy, I guess that's the common scenario for us too. I mean, when the nodes go out of warranty, we start, thinking about decommissioning those, but then the extra capacity is always nice to have. Therefore, they run for a bit longer. I guess like our idea was that if you have like a lot of nodes that are similar, in principle, what you can do is just decommission a few and use them for spare parts. But I'm not sure like how sound strategy is. So this is actually the first time we are in the position that we have to decommission over 50 nodes for our Ceph deployment. So experience of that.
Oh, like I said, I was just going to let them run and slowly fail probably. I mean, until I start seeing a high failure rate of the old hardware, maybe keep it running until then. Like my test cluster, I finally just replaced it. That was like a couple years out of warranty using 4 terabyte disks that had a really bad failure rate, so I finally gave in and bought something brand new for that. But that was just kind of, I was getting tired of replacing disks.
I guess in general, everyone has, like all the others actually keep the nodes just while they are under strategy.
Yeah, anybody else running out of warranty hardware?
So I think our strategy always used to be, as you said, like take a couple of the nodes out and then cannibalize them for spare parts and just run that for a few years out of warranty, or 1 or 2 years out of warranty. I think with Ceph now, we're probably not going to bother about doing that and just let the OSDs die and leave them in, or at least just pull the drives or whatever. But we are only just getting to that stage, so it'll be interesting to see what I think about that in a year's time, how much extra work it's made for us. I mean, if the hardware's still running and not causing problems, then I don't really see any reason why we wouldn't keep running them. But yeah.
Agreed. Unless you need the rack space. I mean, those were 6 terabyte disks, and now there's 16 terabyte disks. I don't know what you're buying, but my stuff going out of warranty is the same 6 terabytes, but I've been still stuck on 12 terabytes disks. I feel like going to 14 or 16 terabytes per disk is a little too dense, in my opinion, for my setup. Anything else people want to chat about? Any bad outages? Any interesting bugs you've hit? Anything? I don't know.
Not unless you want to count. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, unless you count COVID-19 as an interesting bug, we haven't had any.
No, that is a very interesting one.
I wonder if anyone has ever had problems with snapshot trimming. So actually that beat us with Luminous. We'd have to fix the cluster in a way. What happened is that basically in our Luminous cluster, at least, the trimming had no sleep by default. So if you actually were to trim a big snapshot of an RBD image, what would happen is that PSD would just say, okay, too much request. Actually, it would miss beacons and it would be marked down, and that would come up again. And the problem at this stage is that the command would have returned, so that would have think that the image was gone, so the snapshot was gone. But in practice, what happened is only the primary copy of the snapshot would have been deleted. So all the others PGs would have an extra snapshot of them. That of course is quite annoying. then you have a lot of cleanup. Yeah, I wonder if it was just us. We have like quite large RBD images, like 10, 20 teras. So I guess it was not substantial to be trim.
We didn't have any problems with it at our site.
We never had any problem with until we actually moved to really like well, now we have like a trim sleep for that. Apparently there is a configuration that has a trim sleep for the also for spinning Rust, but in our default setup was not there, so but like you put it yourself.
Can I ask I want to ask a non-Ceph question, since a lot of us are coming from large research environments. Does anyone, like, what are people doing for self-hosted email? Because we're in a bit of a crisis situation at CERN at the moment. Are people using Dovecot, or are people using something else, or are people just using Exchange or Office 365 or Gmail? Does anyone have any advice there?
We use Office 365 at Diamond. So.
Office 365 for me.
Does anyone have a self-hosted email?
Yeah, we do. We use Exim and Dovecot.
Exim and Dovecot. How many users? Or not actually, rather than say how many users, like what's the total space used?
Gosh, it's not running on Ceph, but it's we've got about 2 terabytes, maybe a bit more, but about 1,000 users.
1,000 users, okay, and a few terabytes, okay. Great.
We have XM, but only for.
I missed it. You have XM, but only it cut out.
Only for email from robots, if you like.
Oh, I see.
It gets all the high volume stuff.
Then it goes, okay.
But that's run by another team, so I can't really tell you much more about it than what I see as a user. And we're still using IMAP and such like for people like me who want them.
Okay, all right. That's just a parenthesis, because we've been migrating to some groupware, some open source groupware thing, and it's like from Exchange to an open source groupware, and it's broken after 200 users, basically.
Oh. So the Copano thing, right? Was it?
Yeah. I didn't want to say the name, but yeah.
Well, like, I mean, it's good to know if it doesn't scale as expected, but no, because it looked very promising. So.
It's the IMAP implementation is very inefficient. So, and mostly our users want to use IMAP. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, here at the university we're stuck with Lotus Node. VM Node.
Ah, okay.
Anybody have any other thoughts or other random tech questions before we call it a day here? All right. Well, thanks for joining despite all the craziness going on in the world right now. The next one should be late May, and I'll send out the information as it gets closer as usual. Other than that, thanks for joining, and stay safe and healthy.
Yeah, stay safe. See you guys.
Cheers. Thanks, Kevin.
Yep.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks for
All right,
organising.
guys. Yeah, thanks.